Hey, I'm so glad you made it to your midweek shot in the arm. And today's shot is perspective. You ready? Let's go. Perspective, simply put, is a position from which something is considered or evaluated. You already know I'm going straight to our instruction manual. Coming from Ecclesiastes 3:1, and this is from the English Standard Version. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. Amen. This verse lets us know right off the bat that the things we go through in life are not futile, and they won't last forever. Let's read the verse again. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. This verse lends to us perspective. The seasons of life are inevitable. There will be highs and lows. There will be seasons of happiness and seasons of disdain, valleys of despair, and peaks of honor. There will always be this ebb and flow of life, but our perspective makes the difference. Our perspective makes the difference. If our perspective is skewed with emotion, if it's skewed with should-haves, would-haves, could-haves, how comes, why did this happen, then that season of what we may be going through, if our perspective is skewed, it just might last a little longer. As Christians, our perspective, our position from which something is considered and evaluated should have Christ at the center. Should have Christ at the center. Christ should be the focal point. Don't get me wrong. I know that life be lifing. How do I know that? Because I'm experiencing lifing just like you are. That's how I know. So I understand that there are instances, there are circumstances in our life that can cause us to have a skewed perspective. However, it's up to us to change that. In order for us to have a spiritual perspective, in order for us to make sure that Christ is our focal, we have to work at it. And it's going to take a conscious effort to ensure that we don't lose our perspective. So I told you this verse lends to us how we can begin to shift our perspective. And here are 3 takeaways from this verse alone, okay? The first takeaway is everything. The verse says, for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. This tells us there is nothing too big or small. There's nothing going on in your life that the Father isn't aware of. When you begin to shift to a spiritual perspective, you can begin to see that everything is by design. Everything is by design. The second takeaway is season. The verse says, for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. Now, if you've been saved for any length of time, you know that the seasons that we are aware of and God's seasons are 2 different seasons. So we know about winter, spring, summer, and fall. God's season is just that, God's season. It's titled whatever He decides it needs to be. This season of your life may be titled self-care, and God is prompting you and showing you different ways on how to better take care of yourself. Your next season might be titled forgiveness, where you have to walk through learning how to forgive properly, learning how to forgive people who never apologize, learning how to forgive people who won't even admit that they've wronged you. That could be your next season. It all depends on what God decides. And God's season is not our season. His season is titled whatever He feels like we need during that time. My third and final takeaway is time. And I know I keep reading the verse, but I keep reading it because I want you to get it in your spirit. So again, our verse reads, for everything there is a season and time for every matter under heaven. Time does not wait on us. Time keeps on what? Ticking. It keeps ticking. But because of the advancement of technology, very rarely do you see an analog clock anymore. You mainly see digital clocks. With the digital clock, you just see the number change at some point. With the analog clock, you can see it just ticking. And so you have an idea that, okay, well, I have 30 more seconds until this time, or I have 15 more seconds until this time. But guess what? Our Father's time is digital. Our Father is like the digital clock. The time just changes. You can try to guess it. You can try to figure out when it may happen next, or what's gonna be coming up in the next few seconds or minutes or hours. You can do all of that, but our Father works on the digital clock. The time just changes. It just changes. We don't know when it's gonna change. We don't even know how to expect change, but the Father just changes time as He sees fit. I'm talking about our spiritual perspective. Well, I come from a family of alcoholics. So I'm an alcoholic. Well, I come from a family of alcoholics, which is why I don't drink. I come from an abusive family. My mother and father were always at odds, but they've been together forever. So unless I'm being abused, I don't feel like I'm loved. Interesting. I come from an abusive family, and my mother and father were always at odds, and they've been together forever, but I don't want any parts of abuse in my relationship. Perspective. Listen to this story. A man came to a construction site where stonemasons were working. The man said to one, "What are you doing?" The stonemason said, "You can see, I'm chipping a stone." The man walked over to another mason and said, "What are you doing?" He answered, "I'm building a wall." The man walked over to a third mason and said, "What are you doing?" The mason answered, "I'm building a cathedral." Come on, somebody. All three were doing the same thing, but what a difference perspective makes. The first man had very little perspective. He said, "Listen, I'm just chipping at a stone." He was aggravated. I mean, what does it look like I'm doing? The second man had just a little more perspective. He said, I'm building a wall. But that third man said, "I'm building a cathedral." I'm building a cathedral. Perspective. So yes, right now it looks like I'm just chipping at a stone. Yes, right now you can only see the wall coming up. Yes, you may not be able to see how the window pane is going to look. You may not be able to see what the chandelier is going to look like. But because of my perspective, because of the great design, I understand that I am building a cathedral. My God, what perspective do you have? Are you the first man, the second man, or the third man? You can say, "I'm showing up to work and answering these emails," or "I'm showing up to work and preparing myself for my next advancement." You can say, "Oh, I'm just working from home. I'm just folding envelopes and answering calls." Or you can say, "I'm preparing to become the CEO of my very own business." Come on, you can say, "I'm just talking to a few people online." Or you can say, "I'm pouring out everything that God has given me to these people in preparation for where I am headed next." Perspective, y'all. For everything, there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. Not every matter under the sun, but every matter under heaven. This is suggestive to spiritual perspective. Understanding that while we can't control the matter, we can't control the season, we can't control the time, we can control our perspective. So what you go through can either propel you or hold you hostage. Selah. Whew. Now remember, this shot is for you. So maximize this shot of perspective. Until next time.